Okay, welcome everyone to the second Faith and Entrepreneurship event. We're very lucky tonight, and just to do a little bit of housekeeping before we start, I want to just remind everyone, if for whatever reason you're disconnected during the event, you could always click on the link to rejoin at any time. There's no waiting room, so just feel free to click in if you're somehow disconnected, okay? We'll have the two speakers will present today. We have two great speakers. We'll talk a little bit about those, our great speakers, a little bit in a few minutes. But please leave your questions till the end. If you have questions or if something pops up into your mind as the event's going on, just put it into the chat, and I will I'll call on you when we come to the Q&A section. Okay, and please, a few other things. Please make sure that your mics are muted at all times, except when you're asking questions. That would be really great. And after you ask a question, please remute your mic. That's just to prevent any problems. And just so you know, this session will last for 1 hour. We'll be out of here on time today. So just make sure, you know, if I have to pull you in at the end, or if you're asking a question, we may have to cut you off. So don't feel bad about it. It's just we want to get everyone in and out on time. Okay. Before we start, I want to talk a little bit about the McNair Center, who is the sponsor of tonight's event. The McNair, we're focused, our mission is to empower students to find independence in their life. We are very focused on either helping students find their side hustle while they're at university, like one of our speakers tonight, right? Or to find entrepreneurship in their life as a life goal, like another one of our entrepreneurs tonight. And so we're really focused either through the workshops that we have, the faith and entrepreneurship events we have like tonight, our Q&A events, and or our pitch and many contests we have during the year. So please do join, innovate, practice, and learn. McNair is here for you. So I'm going to introduce or talk a little bit of the two speakers. I'm going to introduce the first one, and I'm going to just introduce each one as we come along. So April Petronella will be speaking tonight, and Jennifer Rocha will be speaking tonight. And I'm going to introduce April, and then after that, I'm going to let April take over the show. Okay. So April is the owner for Petro Fox Education. April is a freelance curriculum and assessment writer. Additionally, she is an author in developing content for educational publishers and standardized test creators. For all of you students out there, she's the one helping you create the tests. So she holds a BA in liberal arts, an MA in history, and a Master's of Education, early childhood education. Wow, very educated, April, amazing. And with that introduction, I'm gonna let April take over the show. Go to it, April.
Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna share my screen. I have a couple of slides. And now if I can find the button that I used to, there we go. All right, thank you so much. My name is April Petronella, and I am a freelance writer focusing on education, particularly curriculum products and assessment products, tests, textbooks, things like that. And so I wanted to talk a little bit today kind of about my journey to entrepreneurship and what I do. So to kind of ground the discussion, I wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of vocation. And I looked this up in the dictionary prior to the talk this evening, and it said that a vocation is something you feel a particular suitability toward. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a job or a marital status or, you know, anything specific, just something that you feel particular suitability towards. And this has been kind of a theme in my life course and in my career. So to kind of take you back to the beginning, I graduated in 2001, as Dr. Wook was saying, with a BA in liberal arts. And I think I noticed on the McNair Center website that there is a portion about entrepreneurship and liberal arts. And I'm very much an example of that. I think that's great. You don't necessarily have to have an MBA to be an entrepreneur. I'm very much a liberal arts person. So to kind of take you back, when I was a senior in college and was kind of thinking about what I wanted to do, I wasn't really sure. I took a lot of different classes. I had a lot of different interests, not one singular interest. And I think I was working actually at a restaurant as a hostess at a restaurant at the time that I graduated. And I started thinking about a month or two after I received my degree that, well, I got to get a professional job, you know. So I was down at the St. Thomas Career Services office looking through binders of jobs. In those days, if you can believe it, they literally had printed out job advertisements, and you would pull the binder off the shelf. So it would be like accounting. Okay, here's the accounting jobs, or restaurant management, here's those jobs. So I was flipping through binders thinking, you know, I got to get a professional job. I don't want to work in a restaurant, yada, yada, yada. And as I'm doing this, a man walks into the career services office and says to the woman up front, I have a school, a private school in Bel Air, and I need to hire an 8th grade English teacher. And my ears perk up, and I come out of the little room looking, you know, from looking at the binders and say, I'll be your English teacher. And, you know, right then and there, we set up an interview. And this started my sort of professional career, if you will, in teaching. And teaching is a wonderful thing. We as a society have a lot of respect for teachers, as we should. But there are good teachers and there are not so good teachers. And I am here to tell you that I was one of those not so good teachers. And it wasn't from lack of enthusiasm for the subject matter or enthusiasm for education. It had to do more with interpersonal skills. I tend to be a very rigid person. I'm not very flexible. I tend to be a person that's very, no, we're taking the spelling test Thursday at 12:30. What do you mean there's a fire drill? No, we're taking the spelling test Thursday at 12:30. And so it seemed like forces were trying to tell me maybe that teaching wasn't for me, but I still wasn't really sure. And so I kept teaching for a while. I tried different grades all the way through college. I taught history at a community college. I taught English. I taught English as a second language. Did this for about 7 years. And then I guess I finally came to the conclusion, maybe this is not for me, but I still had this passion for education. And in thinking about my vocation and my suitability and what I was really good at, I started thinking about business and how I could incorporate business and education. And I got into supplemental education, which is kind of a fancy term for tutoring, and worked for the global leader in supplemental education, a Japanese company called Kumon. I don't know if you're familiar or not, but anyway, this was a franchise. So, they sold kind of a ready-made system to franchisees who would open up their own supplemental educational centers. And I did this for a good 6 or 7 years. And I think I was more suited to this work that kind of blended education and business. But it was very high stress, very long hours, lots of travel. At that time, I was single, so it kind of filled a void in a way, all of that work. I had some life changes. I met a man, I got married, and what I wanted started to change. And so I started to look elsewhere. And I had a series of some really bad jobs. And I think it's important to kind of reflect on those too. And I've had more of them than the two I'm going to share with you, but I'm going to share the two most memorable ones. Right after I left Kumon, I went to work for a competitor, another educational franchise company. And I had just been hired, and about a week in, they call me up and say, April, we need you to go to Canada for 6 months. Should have been a red flag right then and there, but I wanted to be, flexible. That wasn't really my strong suit, so I wanted to kind of step into that space. So I go to Canada. I find out that instead of them putting me up in a hotel, they gave me a bedroom in a private home that had one bathroom that I shared with 4 other people. 3 of them were men. I had to get up at like 4:30 in the morning to be able to take a shower before I had to go to work for the day. Anyhow, it became apparent after a while that this was not for me. There was one other one that I'll share with you, and then I'll move on. But I also worked for another supplemental educational company, another franchise company. This one was a startup, and I thought, oh, startup, exciting. I'm going to be on the cutting edge. This is going to be the next Google. I'm going to make all this money. I'm going to have a stake. And what ended up happening is that the woman that owned the company never had enough money to pay the staff. So every payday, she would leave the office and leave me there in the office to deal with all of the angry people who weren't getting paid. So anyway, there's good jobs and bad jobs. The point is, it's a journey. So I'm still kind of looking for this fit, right? Now, through this time, I did have some educational successes, my own education. I got an MA and an MED, and I do think that education and the commitment to education is part of my vocation, and it is part of my journey. And what I love about education is that it's constantly changing. Nothing stays the same. And I like that. I like constantly being challenged. So eventually, I guess it was about 7 or 8 years ago, I felt like I finally found my fit with business ownership. An old friend of mine called me up, and she owned a Kumon center. So she was on the franchisee side, and she kind of wanted to retire. And so we struck a deal, and we started working as business partners. So I bought into this business and just kind of really hit my stride. And it wasn't so much the work, but it was the freedom I had to kind of pursue what I really wanted to pursue. And one of the things that I did was become very involved in the community. When you're in the education business, you need to gain the trust of the community. I joined the Chamber of Commerce. I got on all of these committees. I started doing community outreach. I started a parade that we still do in the Heights every year. And I felt like that was really, my calling. Of course, nothing good lasts forever. And after a few years, my business partner, who owned the building that our business was located in, unfortunately went through a divorce, and assets had to be sold, so we had to sell the business. I was not at all prepared for this. I had no plan at all. I thought about a lot of different things. Should I get a job? Should I buy another franchise? What should I do? A lot of discernment there, a lot of thinking about what am I going to do? And nothing really jumped out at me. And then again, another one of these just shot in the dark kind of opportunities happened. A woman reached out to me. She had seen my resume on some site I posted it to and said, hi, you know, have you ever thought about writing questions for the ACT? And I said, well, no, I haven't, but why not? And so she gave me a project. I loved it. And as it were, the rest is history. So I started my own company creating educational content. I call it Petro Fox Education. I'm one of those kind of liberated women that didn't change her name to her husband's name, but my husband's last name is Fox. So I put his name in my business name as kind of a compromise. And the business is me. I contract with companies to write assessments. Assessment is a fancy word for a test or some way of assessing knowledge, typically a test. I also write textbooks. I write educational technology products. I write study guides a lot. If you're familiar with like Sparks Notes, Cliff's Notes, I contract with them as well. And I love this work, but I wanted to kind of, in describing it, I want to make sure that I mention both the pros and the cons. So the biggest pro for me is that I'm in the business of intellectual capital, human capital. I'm selling my knowledge. I'm selling my expertise. That means there are virtually no startup costs. Can do what I do with a computer in a home office, on your couch. You don't even need an office. There's also that freedom that I really like. I get to pick the projects I want to work on. I don't have to take every project that's offered to me. I can select the ones that really interest me. And because I am my own boss, which is both good and bad, because sometimes I'm not a very good boss and I'm very hard on myself, but because I'm my own boss, I have this freedom of schedule, which means I can continue to pursue this volunteerism, which I think is a big part of my vocation, something I feel very strongly about and suited for. Of course, there are some downsides. Being a contractor, there are no benefits. So when I first started out, you know, I relied on my husband for health insurance and those things. I'm at the point now where I'm certainly making enough income that I could afford, you know, private health insurance, but that is a consideration. And there's also just generally not a lot of regulation of contract work. So I have to be very careful when I'm selecting projects. You know, minimum wage, if you will, does not apply. So the company will come to me and say, hey, we want to pay you X number of dollars for X product. So I have to really think about how much work is involved in that particular project and whether or not I want to take that. And then, of course, there's the sporadic nature of the work. So there are weeks where I'm working, you know, 70 hours a week, and then other weeks where maybe I have a whole day off or I'm only working 30 hours that week. But I think you get good when you work in a field like mine in, you know, kind of planning. And now I project out, okay, what is my projection for income this quarter and this year? What months do I think are going to be slower and what months do I think are going to be busier? So I guess in a nutshell, that's it. That's me. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that, April. That was a great presentation, and we'll have a Q&A a little bit about. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions for you at the end, especially in dealing with assessment, right? But thank you very much. It's really brilliant to see your journey. So now we're going to introduce our second guest tonight, Jennifer Rocha. Jennifer is a recent graduate of the University of St. Thomas. Jennifer found her passion, Rocha nails, while she was in school. I believe it was high school, and took that side business, a side hustle, into her into, for lack of a better word, into a real life. And so we're going to hear a little bit about that. It's always amazing to me when I look back in my life, people who started something as a hobby, something as a passion, and were able to translate it into something that is something that they can bring into real life and really make an opportunity out of it. And that was amazing. So let me introduce a little bit of her background as well. She has a BA and a master's degree in business administration. And with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Jennifer to present. Thank you, Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. So as Dr. Wook mentioned, my name is Jennifer Rocha. I'm also known as Rocha Nails because that is my business. So a little backstory as to how that started. It actually was a hobby. I remember being a preteen with a very large, colorful polish collection, you know, so I would always just style my nails differently, sometimes once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times per week. So I would always just get creative with my own nails and start to get creative on myself. And so once I transferred into high school, I started working with a more elaborate product, which is acrylic. I'm sure some of the ladies on here are familiar with acrylic nails. So rather than just working with polish, I started working with acrylic on myself. And as a high school girl, you know, all your classmates see your nails and they're like, oh my gosh, who did your nails? Where do you go? What is this on your nails? So that's how I started to market my work without even trying to, because it was a hobby, you know, it wasn't meant to be a business. But that's how some of my classmates started asking me to do their nails as well. And then they would go home and tell their moms about it and their cousins and their grandmas. So that's how I started to, you know, by word of mouth, I started to grow my clientele without meaning to. And so that's when I realized the opportunity there was in the nail world. And so while being in high school, I actually started attending a community college to obtain an associate's degree. So I was doing a dual credit program. So I graduated high school with my associate's degree in general studies. And then when I thought of like terms of a career, I never thought of doing nails because I was raised to think, oh, I have to go to school, I have to get a good education, to find a good job, to get good benefits. You know, I was always in a job mindset because I was raised that way because that's all my parents knew. So I always thought, okay, I have to get a good job, I have to make my parents proud. And as far as knowing what to do for a living, I wanted to do something that I could give back to the community. So what popped into my head first was nursing. You know, you're caring for others, you're giving back to the community, you're doing charitable contributions. I just thought that was my go-to. And so I did. That's actually how I ended up at UST because I was informed that it had a great nursing program. So I was like, okay, that's where I want to go. You know, I want to be at a competitive program and that'll be it. So I transferred to the University of St. Thomas, still doing nails on the side, you know, continuing it as a hobby. But I decided that I needed to grow that because, of course, you know, to pay for school and tuition, books, everything, gas, even for the commute. So I made my Instagram page where I started to market my work even more. It was no longer just word of mouth. I had my social media page, both on Instagram and Facebook, actually. However, my Instagram is the one that has taken off a lot better because I feel like it's more popular among the teen world, which is the ones that are all about nails, you know? So I started my Instagram page. It grew from there. And I started at UST my first semester in the pre-nursing field. So I was taking the prereqs to be able to join the nursing program. And while doing that, like I said, I was still doing nails just because I knew that getting a job, you don't always have great flexibility. You know, they're not always willing to work with your school hours. Whereas having my own business and working my own schedule, I would definitely be able to work around my school hours because, you know, scheduling is always crazy. You can't always get morning classes or always evening classes. So it worked perfectly. So throughout my 4 years at UST, it was great. It was helpful. I was able to control my income, control my time working, still be able to pay for tuition, my books, everything I needed. And so a little track back. After my first semester of nursing, I was noticing that it wasn't my passion. Like I wasn't enjoying what I was learning and it wasn't so easy. So I decided to kind of take a step back and see what it was that I wanted to do with my life. Did I really see myself working at the medical center for the rest of my life, or just working in that field? And I realized that with how I had been doing with my nail business, I could just go from there and grow that, which is why I decided to switch my degree to business. And I did. So that's how I ended up with both my bachelor's and my master's in business administration. And when that happened, it was so hard because my parents, well, even my mind, but even for my parents, it was set in stone that I was going to be a nurse, So when I had to break that to them, it was so hard for me. I felt like I was having a midlife crisis at 18, So it was so hard, but thankfully they were very supportive. And even now, they still are. I recently graduated, and right around the time that I graduated was when COVID broke out, so that definitely took a big hit on my business, just because what I do, it requires human contact. I have to have my client in front of me to be able to beautify their nails. So it definitely took a big hit on my business, but I was able to branch out still within the field. So I came up with something that is called press-ons. Again, the ladies here, I'm sure you're familiar, the press-on nails that you can buy at Walmart, Target, I started to do that. And it's something that I didn't have experience with, but I had to find a way to, again, make my business work and get out there and still have that stream of income, because I had already set my mind to stick to my business. So I had to branch out, learn to do that. So that was definitely a huge obstacle that I had to overcome, because I was out of work for almost 2 months. So that's something that I did. And I actually continued that. Even now that I'm able to physically take clients again, I still offer press-ons, because like I said, my Instagram has grown so much. My press-ons ended up in New York, in California, in Florida. I mean, I've been shipping these out everywhere. It's been so amazing, and I feel very accomplished because I was able to do this. And so one of the newer things that I have going on now, I actually dove further into the nail world, and I started my own nail supply store. So I have been contacting vendors to get customized products, to get stuff with even my logo on them, So that's the newest thing that's actually just started maybe 2 months ago. So that's something that I'm still working on growing. It's currently an online store. I'm still undecided on whether I want to have a physical location for this, just because I feel that keeping it online, I have much more flexibility as to my working hours and fulfilling orders and shipping them out and all that, but it's still in the works. So stay tuned for that. But I guess two of the main takeaways from my experience in this journey with my business are that, first, you have to let your faith be greater than your fear. Because with anything and everything that you do, especially if it's something that involves taking a risk, or if it's something that involves stepping out of your comfort zone, you will have fear. But if you have faith that you'll do good and that you'll succeed and that there's promise and opportunity in what you're willing to do, it's going to work out. God will make a way, and it's going to work out. Another thing that I have learned is that it's very important for all of us to step out of our comfort zone, because I feel that when you're comfortable, when you feel at peace, when you feel like you're accomplished, and I don't mean that feeling accomplished isn't a good thing. It's definitely great to feel accomplished, but don't think that because you feel accomplished, you're done. Like, oh, I did this thing I wanted to do. I'm done. I'm going to sit here and just be, fine. When you're comfortable, you're not growing. You're not getting better. You're not setting new goals for yourself. So I definitely feel that it's very, very important to step out of your comfort zone. Do something that scares you at least once a month. Try something new, because that's the only way that you'll grow. You'll learn. If you're doing something you've never done before, you're going to have a new experience to share with others, to learn from, whether you accomplish something or whether you fail. Even a failure involves a learning experience, because you know what not to do the next time you do that. So that's my story, and stay tuned for everything that I have coming up for my business in the future. Thank you.
Jennifer, that was an amazing story, and thank you very much for sharing that. I think everyone is very inspired to hear what you've done. One of the things, the topics you hit on, and I'd like to ask this of both of you. You've already kind of answered it, but I'm going to come back to you and ask you a second question. But I'm going to put this to April. April, how has this experience with COVID affected your business? And has it changed your business? Has it changed the way you do things? And what's been the impact of this COVID crisis, the crisis on your business?
I think as far as the volume of my business has actually increased, because as schools and universities transition to new educational models, people like me are very much in demand. But in terms of personally, and in my business life and my personal life, one of the things about a home office is the isolation. And I had, I've really struggled with that throughout, this career arc in some ways. And the way that I dealt with that was by intentionally scheduling things to get out of the home office and interact with people. And so since so many of those things that I was doing are canceled, that has been hard when, my whole life is just in this office.
That's a very unique point. I've learned that as well. I think we all kind of experienced that. Jennifer, I want to ask you a question. You've already talked about how how you reacted to it. Do you think COVID, the experience with COVID, has made you a better entrepreneur? Made you more innovative? I mean, you showed that to be innovative, but personally, how has it affected you as an entrepreneur?
So definitely, simply because before COVID, I only offered one service, which was, of course, doing your nails with acrylic. But as I mentioned, it did make me branch out to a new product, which is something that I'm certain that if COVID had not happened, I would not have taken that leap of faith and, tried that new product or tried to sell. And as I mentioned, it's still selling even now. So I like to see the good in the bad, so I'm glad that actually allowed me to branch out and create this new product. So it also shows that it taught me to be a little brave, because since it was a whole different technique, I had to make a big investment to buy the new products that I needed to sell these press-ons. So it was a risk I took. It was a large investment. So it definitely taught me to take that risk, to take a risk, because there's always opportunity.
A follow-up question to that, and I think you've already kind of hit it on it. How has your, because, St. Thomas is a faith-based institute, and I think it's really a very interesting topic, because we've not talked about a lot, but how has your faith affected your entrepreneurism, or how, do you feel that they're contradictory, or do you think they work together? How is your faith, your personal faith in God, or in yourself, or in whatever the church has affected your business, or the way that you do your entrepreneurship? As a follow-up there, Jennifer, if you could.
So I definitely think that they work hand in hand. I was raised in a Catholic family, which was another reason that I ended up at UST, it being a Catholic university. I was like, oh, perfect. But I definitely am a strong believer, and anything and everything that I do, I put it in God's hands, and I always say, God, if it's meant to work out, you're going to make it work out for me, right? So even when I recently started my online supply store, I was so afraid, because again, it was a large investment. It was a huge risk that I was taking. But I like I said, I put all my faith in him, and I said, if it's meant to be, it will be, and I know you'll make a way, and he did. So here I am.
Very nice.
Okay.
I'll pose the same thing to April. How do you contemplate faith, or how has it impacted you in your life in regard to your entrepreneurism, or in regard to your own personal development?
Well, I'm very active in my parish.
Mhm.
And being an entrepreneur, I think, has enabled me to do that, and it gives me the freedom to do that. I'm on my church's pastoral council. I'm on the school board of our parochial school. Much better role for me than working as a teacher there. Uh, and I really feel a calling in that, as far as being a voice for um, progressive ideas within the Catholic Church and women's voices within the Catholic Church. And I really invest a lot of my energy in that. But I think that, by being able, by being an entrepreneur, that enables me to structure my life in such a way that I am able to, devote time to those sorts of things. So if there is a, noontime textbook adoption meeting, I might be the only person that can go to that, or whatever. So I would say, definitely the time element.
It's very nice. Thank you for both for sharing that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start opening up questions for the people who have joined today. And so if you want to ask a question of the speaker, if you just put your, just put something in chat, say, I want to ask a question, I'll call on you. But just if you can put it in chat so I can choose, so first it'll become first come, first serve. But let's see, first, Omar, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. I have a question for Jennifer. What means did you use to market your online business?
So it's mainly been Instagram, just because it's my largest platform. I have 28,000 followers there at the moment, and I actually started a second page just for my nail supply store. And that way, when I share my products on my main page, which is the one with 28,000 followers, I tag my second page, which is my shop page, and it kind of attracts just the nail techs to that page, which nail techs are, the other girls that also does nails, who are the ones that would be interested in purchasing the nail supplies. So Instagram has definitely been my greatest and best marketing platform. But of course, I do have my website where everyone can purchase the products off of.
Have you considered running Instagram ads?
I actually have, not too often. I've actually never paid for them. They always are offered by Instagram when they see that one of my posts is performing really well. They say like, oh, we're going to give you a $30 credit, to boost up its performance. So I just go with that. But I've never actually paid for one out of pocket. But I have seen great results from it.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Davis has a question. Davis, would you want to go ahead, unmute your mic and ask a question, please?
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay?
Perfect. You sound
My question
great.
is for, thanks. My question is for April. April, I want to know are there any standards or rules for educational content creators that'll prevent them from selling the answers or the solutions to the content?
That's a great question. Yes, I have so much crazy software on my computer that I don't even understand, that I have to tunnel into these LMS programs with 10 different passwords. Yes, I typically sign a confidentiality agreement for every single project. The degree of confidentiality varies from project to project, but there are some projects that I'm not even allowed to say that I worked on, for fear that someone could approach me and try to bribe me. So yes, it is very tightly controlled. And after each project is finished and I submit the materials, I have to shred all of my printed materials, and I lose any login privileges, even for the materials that I created. So it is very tightly controlled.
Okay, And I have another question for Jennifer. I want to know, how much do you charge for a set of acrylic nails? And how did you determine how much to charge?
Okay, so that's a good question because it definitely goes hand in hand with experience. When I first started doing nails, I was charging $10 for anything and everything. My clients could bling out their nails. They could go with something very simple. Anything and everything was $10 just because I was still gaining experience. You know, they were doing me a favor by letting me practice on them. So that's why I was just charging $10. Then little by little, as I saw my progress in my own work, I started to increase my prices. My prices now start at $40, and that's for a basic one color set. If clients want to add flowers, rhinestones, stickers, anything, of course it varies, you know, depending on what they want to add. But my highest paying client has been $200, so it ranges. Yeah.
Okay. We have a write-in. Riley asked, I believe for both of you, how has being an entrepreneur affected your family life? April, you want to try that out?
Well, I have to budget in a different way. My household has to budget in a different way. When you're an entrepreneur, I guess depending on the way your business is set up, but I pay estimated quarterly taxes. So sometimes in managing finances with my husband, I'll have to say, no, that money there, that's not real money. That's in an account saved for taxes. So I think, you know, as far as budgeting and planning for tax liability, as far as household budgeting, because, you know, there are some months where I may pull in $6,000 and some months where I may pull in $1,000, you know, so it's, you have to budget.
I'll put it to you, Jennifer, how also, but maybe frame it in a different way. How does it affect your personal life, being an entrepreneur, in regard to like the things that you can do, friends you have, maybe even, I don't want to get into your love life, but in dealing with you know, your personal life, how does it impact?
Right. So that's another good question. When people think of being a business owner, they always think, oh, you have freedom of setting up your own schedule. You have the freedom of working the days you want and having time off whenever you want. And it is true to a certain extent, because now that I have my online store, I am busy sometimes even at midnight, still packing orders, you know, so I gave up the opportunity to work 9 to 5 just to work 24/7 for myself, right? So that, it definitely, to answer your question, it definitely does affect my personal life, because sometimes I try my best to kind of arrange my schedule to my boyfriend's working schedule, because I have the freedom to do that, you know? So I don't work too late on Fridays. On the weekends, I only work Saturday morning, like really try to adjust it to his working schedule. But I also need to take into consideration my clients and their availability, you know? So I also need to cater to my clients and have good customer service. So I take that into consideration, and it definitely sometimes affects us. Sometimes we're out on Sunday night and we have to have dinner a little bit earlier because I have to get home to fulfill orders, you know? So it has its pros and cons. So you definitely have to weigh in the different options.
Very nice. Martin, you said you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, so my question was for April. April, you mentioned that you started doing contract work and that, you know, you weren't able to get benefits and stuff like that. So I'm a rig welder. I'm in the, you know, the refinery world, the oil world, all that stuff, you know. At one point in time, I would like to do my own contracting, you know, be my own contractor. So how did you go about, you know, getting your first clients, insurances, you know, protect yourself with insurance, you know, all that stuff? Did you go out there and do the contracts yourself? Who wrote for you? You know, that kind of stuff. I like to, you know, get some information on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, before I was married, I had an Obamacare health plan that I paid monthly for. I really felt strongly that that wasn't something I wanted. I felt like, oh my gosh, you know, the moment I let health insurance lapse, that's when something really horrible will happen to me. So, um, but in terms of, you know, business liability insurance, yes. You know, and I think the way I kind of did it was I started off small. You know, I started off with a few clients, and a few clients grew to more clients. And I built my business based on referrals. And I would have, and I'm at the point now in, I think, year 4, I do not prospect for business at all. I turn business away. They come to me. I have regular clients. It certainly wasn't that way in the beginning. And I think, you know, to what Jennifer was saying about having faith that it will come. But yeah, there is a slow start. And I think if you can find a way to maybe have some other sort of maybe part-time job that has some stability or even some benefits while you're building that contract work, then that's probably a better situation than the way I did it, where I just kind of, you know, jumped right in. But you know, and I think that's part of our human nature, because we want that safety and that security, and that is tough. So I hear you on that.
Thank you.
Gracie has a question, and I'll just read it to you. I have a question for Jennifer. How did you build your website to sell your products?
So I actually had to look, of course I could build it from scratch on like Wix or something, but it was something that I wanted to get done a bit quicker, just because, again, through the pandemic and everything, my income has been greatly affected. So I wanted to start selling as soon as I could. You know, I already had the products in hand. So I actually looked around, because there are different servers that already have like templates for different websites, and then you just kind of like put your products on there at pricing and all that. So I ended up going with Squarespace, but I also hear that Shopify is a great one. Those are the two main ones, and I'm actually considering transferring to Shopify, because I just realized there's some more benefits on there. So if that's something you're looking into, I suggest Shopify. Yes.
And Shannon Ugo, a recent winner in our pitch contest, has a question. Shannon?
Hi, thank you. It was third place. So, my question is I'm glad we have women on the panel, but have any of you ever been pregnant during trying to obtain your entrepreneur dream? How did you handle it if you were?
So I have not been pregnant, but I do have 2 stepchildren, one in college and one who's a senior in high school. And so I have certainly felt pressure to earn money in order to support a child's educational endeavors. But as far as pregnancy, unfortunately, I met my husband too late in life for that. But you know, I do have stepchildren, so I do think children complicate things to some degree, because sometimes you feel like, am I being selfish in doing this? Could I be making more money if I was doing something else and be providing more for children?
So for me, I also have not been pregnant during my journey in my business, but it is in the works for the future. And it's a little bit harder on my end, just because what I do is dangerous to pregnant women. So it's not recommended that pregnant women get their nails done too often throughout the pregnancy, just because the smell of the products that go on your nails is so strong. And so that's actually another big reason that I started my two other sources of income. The press-ons, that wasn't in the plans, like I said, because of the pandemic, that's something that came about. But as far as my online shop, I know that's going to be another source of income that I'll have when it comes to me having to take a maternity leave or something, But yeah, so I guess that's it. Like I said, it's something that I did have in the works already, starting my nail supply store. I just didn't know how soon it would be. And it just so happened that I was pushed more into it because of the pandemic. But that just means I can have kids sooner, right? No, I'm kidding. We'll see.
I muted my mic there. We're gonna have one last question. April, you said you had a question for Jennifer.
I do. I'm wondering, you talked about specialization in acrylic. So I'm wondering why you chose that over dip or gel. I'm a dip girl myself, but which I guess is a kind of acrylic, but why you chose that particular, I don't know, genre of nail art over others? Is it cheaper to buy the materials, or why?
No, it's just quality. Even when I would get my own nails done, I would go to the nail salon. I did try different products. As far as dip, I never have tried, just because sanitary reasons. I don't think it's very sanitary to have everyone dipping their finger in the same powder, so that's a service I have never done myself, and I don't offer either. But as far as gel and acrylic, I saw that there's better quality in acrylic. So of course I want to give quality to my clients, So that's what I specialize in. But I also offer gel manicures, just the shellac on your natural nail. As far as designs go, I'm not the greatest artist when it comes to freehand drawing, so that's not something I offer. But I say, like, hey, we can get you some Mickey Mouse stickers, but I won't draw it.
So I'm going to have Isabel give the last question, if that's okay. Isabel, she actually snuck in right as I said at the end there. Isabel, you wanna go?
So for either woman, how useful was networking to the growth of your business, and do y'all have any tips?
I'm a huge networker. I am on the board of my Chamber of Commerce. I chair committees. I go to lots of networking events. To me, it's vital, not just for business development, but for support, for a sounding board. When you're a sole proprietor in particular, there's no one across the hall for me to bounce ideas off of. So people in my network kind of serve that collegial sounding board in that role for me. As far as tips for networking, I would just say, get out there, smile, get some business cards, and you'll find people are really nice. I know networking things can seem intimidating at first, but really, people are there to meet other people.
So for me, thankfully in my line of work, my clients are walking advertisements, right? So they have their nails on their hands, and they're always just, when they go out to eat, when they're shopping, of course, people ask, oh my gosh, who did your nails? So they just share my Instagram page real quick. So that definitely does lower my marketing cost, because they do the marketing for me majority of the time. But as far as any tips to networking, I definitely agree with what April stated. Whether you want to find a job or whether you want to start a business, I feel that it's very important to network, because you never know who you're going to run into. It may be someone with either the funds to start up your business, or maybe you may have the funds and they have the idea. You can find a business partner. You never know who you're going to run into. So I definitely think it's very important to network, get out there, meet new people, because the opportunities are out there.
Thank you.
Okay, we're at the end. We're coming to the end of time. And funny enough, next week we're having a workshop and it's on networking. So thank you very much for promoting the advertisement of that. But I think we had a great session today in our second Faith and Entrepreneurship event. And I really appreciate our two entrepreneurs that came today, April and Jennifer. We couldn't have done it without you. And also, I'll shout out to the students who showed up and were a part of the conversation, joining. We also, we're here for you. This is a part of all of our journeys together. And from the McNair Center, from the University of St. Thomas, thank you for everyone for showing up tonight. It was a great event, and thank you for coming. You have a beautiful night.
Thank you. Thank everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.